All right, everyone. So in this lesson, I'm going to be talking about my creative optimization strategy and how I test new ads with sandbox campaigns. So first off, why do we want to do this? Well, the goal of doing this is to test new ads with your top audiences to increase relevance, to increase the estimated action rates, to increase the user experience. These are all major factors in the Facebook ads auction. And so by testing a lot of different ads with your top audiences, this is essentially the key to reducing your customer acquisition costs and scaling profitably. And I've already explained this in the important Facebook ads theory, the first lesson in this module. So if you haven't watched that, I'd recommend watching it. And this graph sums it up, right? So with a good creative, you have to pay a lot less. This green part is how much you have to pay. With a bad creative, you have to pay a lot more. And so that's why you want to test a lot of creatives. And so to do this, I like to use creative sandbox campaigns. I've already explained what a sandbox campaign is. It's just a campaign for testing. And so for creatives, what I recommend is using either a PPE campaign or a website conversions campaign optimizing for view content. And as I mentioned previously, as of late, I've been preferring using the website conversions view content campaign because this gets me higher quality data and also get a lot more view contents for the same price, right? So I just get a lot more data and I can test my ads more effectively with less budget. And so I'd recommend using a website conversions view content campaign for your creative sandbox. And so what you want to do in a creative sandbox is test with your best audience. And so when I showed you in the Facebook ads launch strategy video, the targeting for the initial creative test was just a really broad audience, right? Because at that point, you don't know who your best audience is. However, once you start to identify who your best audience is, you don't want to test with a random broad audience anymore. You want to test with your best audience because that's who you're trying to optimize your messaging and your relevance with. And so test with your best audience, one ad per ad set, same targeting for each ad set. And I'm going to show you how to set up the campaign in a second, but I just want to go over a few more things. Optionally, you can run your current best creative alongside to compare, right? So this is called a control ad set. So if you're running a test with like 5 ad sets, you want to have one ad set that's a control ad set, which is your current best ad set. This is what you're going to compare the performance relative to, right? Is it doing better or worse than your control ad set? You don't necessarily need this if you're just trying to see which ad is the best out of like 3 ads. But if you want to see if an ad is better than your current best ad, then it helps to run your current best creative alongside. Now the campaign budget, you want to set this to $10 times the number of test ad sets. So if you're testing 5 ad sets, 5 times 10, $50 campaign budget. You want to set ad set spend limits for each ad set of half of the budget per ad set. Same thing that I explained in the previous Facebook ads launch strategy lesson. So if you're doing $10 per test ad set, you want to set a spend limit of minimum $5 just to ensure that each ad gets some testing data. And then this is also optional, but this is what I've been doing recently. I just set an automated rule to pause each ad set once it hits 1,000 impressions. And then once they all have 1,000 impressions, they're all automatically paused. And then that's when I'm going to compare the data. So here's the graph showing how that campaign is set up. So this is just the creative sandbox campaign. The campaign objective should be website conversions, view content, or PPE. However, I'd recommend website conversions, view content. And the budget should be $10 times the number of ad sets, so the number of creatives that you're testing. So let's say you're testing 5 creatives, a budget of $50 for the campaign would be good. I wrote 50 to 100. You can use 100 if you want to collect data faster, but $10 per ad set is enough, especially if you're doing website conversions, view content. And so as for the ad sets, you want to have identical ad sets. So if you're testing 5 ad sets, you want to have 5 identical ad sets. I only showed 3 here, but I put the 3 little dots to show that you just do the same thing all the way to ad set number 5. And so what you can do is you can just create ad set number 1 and then duplicate it 4 times to get the rest of the ad sets. So ad set number 1, you want to target your best audience identified so far. So that could be, a single interest. It could be a lookalike audience, whatever it may be. This is who you want to target for your first ad set. Now, for placements, you just want to do automatic placements. And then the last thing is you want to set a spend limit. And so you want to set the spend limit to half of the budget per ad set. So if you're doing $10 per ad set, you want to set a spend limit of $5. This is just to ensure that all ad sets get some testing data. And then for the actual ads, this is the only thing that varies. So all these ad sets are identical, and then the ads change, right? So first creative, second creative, fifth, third, fourth, and fifth creative. And you only want to change one variable versus the other creative. So you don't want to change, the video here, then change the headline here, then change the thumbnail here. Otherwise, you won't know what actually caused the change. And so only change one variable at a time, and then set it up like this, and then you're good to go. I want to show you an actual example of one of these sandbox campaigns. So I launched this one just last night. for the purpose of this video. And so in this one, this was just an ad copy test. So I had 5 different videos, same video, and then just different ad copies. And so let's see how I set that up. So if we just go to the campaign settings, you'll see that, this is a website conversions campaign optimizing for view content. And I just wrote ad copy test and the date. And so $50 budget. And then if we let's go inside that campaign to the ad sets. So you can see there's 5 ad sets here. One of them is paused right now because it got set off by that automated rule of 1,000 impressions. So this one is paused. And you can see I have 5 ad sets here. I have a control one. So this is actually this is my current best ad copy, right? This is the one that's currently performing best. And then I have 4 variations here. And these are the ones that I'm comparing to. And so this is how it's set up. Now, for each one of these ad sets, I have identical targeting. I'm just targeting 1% purchase lookalike audience for the T4 countries, US, UK, Canada, and Australia. So that's what my targeting is for this. And then each one has a different ad inside. And so if you want to evaluate the performance, it's a little bit too soon because right now they're still going, right? Once all of these ads hit 1,000 impressions, they're going to be paused. So this one only has 400, 400, 500. This one's almost at 1,000. So once they're all at 1,000, that's when I'm going to compare. But I can compare right now just to show you, the insights that I've got so far. So, somewhat unsurprisingly, the one that's performing best seems to be the control. And the control is my current best, right? So it makes sense. I've already tested, multiple ad copies, and so it's hard for me to come up with a better one than the one that's currently performing best. But there's still some interesting results here. So if we sort by the click-through rate, we can see that the control one has by far the best link click-through rate. If we look at the cost per unique content view, we can see that the control one has by far the cheapest cost per content view. However, this one seems to be, the first variation seems to be doing the best out of all the other variations, right? It's getting the second best link CTR. I mean, this one's slightly higher, but they're almost the same. It's getting the second best cost per unique content view, and it's also getting a pretty good cost per add to cart, better than this one. But like I said, this data is incomplete because we're not comparing them with equal amount of impressions. So once all of these hits 1,000 impressions, I'm going to be able to make a decision on this. And, probably at first glance, this one looks like it might have potential, but it's probably not better than my current one, right? The current one seems to be performing best. So, I would probably pick this variation out of the 4, but the truth is that all four of these variations aren't outperforming my current best. And so I need to keep trying new things until I can outperform my current best. Now, I just want to show you how to set up the rules. So what you want to do inside of your sandbox campaign, once you've set it up, is you want to just select all of the ad sets here, like this, and then you want to go to create a new rule. And then apply rule to 5 ad sets, action, turn off ad sets. Then you just want to go to impressions. Impressions is greater than 1,000, and you want to add this. And then time range today, and then continuously right here. This is up to you if you want notifications when they do activate this rule, and then auto pause at 1K impressions. And so what this is going to do is it's every 30 minutes it's going to check if the ad set has over 1,000 impressions. If it does, it's just going to pause it for me. So this is just so that I don't have to look at my ads all day, and then once the test is complete, I can evaluate the results. So create and then close. And so now I don't have to worry about this. And then once they all hit 1,000 impressions, I'm going to make my decision on this creative sandbox campaign. So now I just want to quickly show you what my hierarchy of creative testing is. And what this means is, what is the most important thing? Like what makes the biggest impact when you test creatives? Like what can you change that's going to make the biggest impact? And obviously the number one is the full video angle, right? Like a completely new video with a different angle or different approach to selling your product, that's going to make the biggest difference by far. However, you don't always have access to this content, right? If you have access to new video content, obviously this is what you want to test because this is going to make the biggest difference. Now, if you don't have a full new video angle, the second best thing you can do to see a really big impact in your creative sandbox is Scroll Stopper, the leading 3-second clip that you use for your video. Changing this makes all the difference because it grabs people's attention, and people that would have just kept scrolling past your ad might watch the whole thing now. And so Scroll Stopper, this is the second most important to test. Number 3 is ad copy. This means your ad text, like that's what copy means. And so ad copy, that's number 3, especially the first line of your ad copy. That grabs people's attention. It makes a big difference changing it up. Number 4, thumbnail. This also makes a big difference. If people have slow internet or they have autoplay on for videos, autoplay off for videos, they're going to see the thumbnail pop up first. And if the thumbnail isn't good, they're going to keep scrolling. So thumbnail makes a big difference. And then headline also. I put this number 5 because it does make a really big difference testing your headline, but only for Facebook placements. So if you're advertising mainly on like Instagram, this isn't as important. As a matter of fact, it's not important at all because it won't even be shown. And so that's the hierarchy of testing, of creative testing. And this is, you should test as high up as possible as you can, given the content that you have, right? So if you've got videos that you haven't tested yet, then you should test that. If you've tested all your videos, then you should test different scroll stoppers. If you've tested all your different scroll stoppers, you should test ad copies. If you've tested all your different ad copies, you should test thumbnails and so on. And so that's what I would recommend doing. All right, so just a quick recap about how to identify top creatives inside of a Sandbox campaign. So once the ad sets all have 1,000 impressions, this is when you can compare the data. And the winning creative is usually going to be the one with the cheapest cost per unique content view / the highest CTR link click. These metrics kind of go hand in hand. If you have a high CTR, you're going to get a cheap cost per content view. And so usually this is the best creative, is the one with the highest CTR, lowest cost per unique content view. However, you do need to pay attention to the add to carts as well. So, some creatives will drive a lot of cheap clicks, but they won't drive any add to carts. And on the other hand, some will be a bit more expensive per click, but they'll drive a lot of add to carts, right? And this is important. And this is just because of your creative. Like if you're creative, like you could have a creative that baits someone to click versus a creative that doesn't bait anyone to click, but just targets, just addresses only the people who have a specific problem and so on, right? And it's going to get the right clicks. Rather than getting a lot of clicks, it's going to get the right clicks. And each click is going to lead to an add to cart. That's just an example, but what I'm trying to say is that it's not only about the cheapest cost per unique content view. You also want to look at the number of add to carts. So there's no one metric that you can look at to identify the top creative. You need to look at all of the metrics and then make a decision based on that. But the most important is the cost per unique content view, and followed by the number of add to carts. So now I want to talk about how you go from a Sandbox campaign to scaling. And so once you identify new winning creatives inside of your Sandbox campaign, what you want to do is you want to add it to all of your ad sets that are meant to get purchases. So, if you're still testing audiences, you can add it to those interest audiences that you're testing. If you're currently scaling other campaigns, you want to add that new winning creative to all the ad sets inside of your scaling campaigns. And this is what I do. And so inside of your scaling campaigns, you should have 3 to 6 winning creatives per ad set. Once you're first starting out, you're not going to have this many creatives, but over time, as you keep testing new creatives, keep finding new winning creatives, you want to add these to your scaling ad set so that you have multiple ads per ad set. And so over time, as the ads get fatigued inside of your scaling campaigns, you can pause the bad ads and then replace with new ads from the Sandbox, right? And so with the Sandbox campaign structure, you can keep testing new ads without disrupting your scaling campaigns, which are going well. And you only take the top creatives from the Sandbox and you add those to the scaling campaigns. And so that's the structure with Sandbox campaign and then scaling campaigns. And so before you duplicate a new ad from the Sandbox into your scaling campaigns, you want to switch it to use existing post so that it keeps all of the engagement. And so I'm going to hop into Ads Manager right now to show you exactly how I would switch. I'll show you exactly how I would take an ad from the Sandbox and add it to my scaling campaigns. All right, so I'm back inside of that Sandbox campaign that I was showing you just a few minutes ago. And as you can see, it's still not done. If I refresh, they still don't all have 1,000 impressions, right? Most of them are like 500. And so once they're all at 1,000 impressions, it'll get paused by the rule, then I can compare. But just for the purpose of demonstration, I'm gonna try to identify the top creative right now and show you how I would add it to my other campaigns. So I'm just gonna sort by the CTR link click here. And so the best one is the control. And so, I've already identified this one as a top creative, so there's no point in adding this to my campaigns because it's already in there. So the second best one of all the variations that I've tested, it seems to be variation number 1, because it got pretty much the same click-through rate as variation number 2, and it actually got an add to cart and a purchase. But like I said, I would much prefer waiting till I have 1,000 impressions on each because the data would be easier to read in most cases. But just for the purpose of the example, let's say that this is the one that I've identified as my winning creative. And so I'm going to take this first variation, and then I'm going to go to Edit Ad. And then you can see the store Cloud Cushion here. I'm not trying to hide that because this is the case study in the next module that I'm going to show you guys about. And so you want to go to edit ad, and then where it says create ad, you want to click use existing post like this, and then just publish it again. And so what this does is that when you duplicate it now, instead of creating a new ad each time, it's just going to use that same post. And so you want to let that publish. There you go. And then once you do that, what you do is you just go to duplicate, and then you can go add it to whatever campaign you're currently scaling with. And so I'm currently not scaling heavily with this store. I'm just testing LLAs, lookalike audiences and interest. So I'm just going to add it to one of those campaigns because those are purchase optimized campaigns. And so it doesn't hurt to add this ad into there. And so let's say this is the campaign that I want to add the new ad into. And then you just go add to all ad sets and then duplicate and then publish. And then there you go. It's going to add that new ad into all of those ad sets. It's using the existing posts, so it's going to be the same post ID for all of them. It's going to get all the engagement on one post. And yeah, and then you're done. That's all you have to do. And then the campaign, the Sandbox campaign should already pause. It'll pause itself once all of these are at 1,000 impressions. Like I said, I shouldn't have tried to identify the top creative until all of them had 1,000 impressions. So just a very simple diagram recapping that. You have your Creative Sandbox campaign here, which is either website conversions, view content campaign, or PPE. And you're testing all these different creatives with your top audiences. Once you identify top creatives, like new top creatives, you want to take it and duplicate it into all of your scaling campaigns. And so, I put multiple arrows because usually you're going to have multiple scaling campaigns, more than just one. You want to add it to all of them. And then inside of these campaigns, you're going to have multiple ads per ad set. And Facebook is automatically going to pick the best ones for you. And over time, you can pause the bad ones. You can replace them with new ads from your Creative Sandbox. And so I often talk about cycling creatives. This is what cycling creatives looks like. So that pretty much covers everything you need to know about the Sandbox creative testing structure. Now, before I end the presentation, I want to quickly touch on a quick way to test a single creative. So Sandbox structure, it works great for testing multiple creatives in a structured manner, right? If you want to test 5 variations or something, the best way is definitely with a Sandbox campaign like I just showed you. However, if you want to just test a single creative, so for example, if you just made one new ad and you think it'll do really well and you want to quickly test it without having to test like 5 variations, what you can do is you can just quickly add it to all the ad sets inside of your warm or hot retargeting campaign. And the reason that this works well is that these people are a sample of your target market, right? It's a small representative sample of your entire target market. So if it does well with these people, it'll probably do well with your cold traffic campaigns as well. So this is a good way to quickly test a creative. However, I still prefer doing the Sandbox testing structure. I like testing multiple variations. Even if I just create one new ad, you can still test 5 different ad copies with that ad. And so I like doing the Sandbox structure, but I just wanted to quickly include this to let you know that you can also quickly test an ad just by adding it to your retargeting campaigns and seeing how it does there. All right, so that is it for the creative optimization strategy. And in the next lesson, I'm going to be talking about how to set up your retargeting funnel. So I'll see you then.